The thing about Halloween parties is they give everyone permission to be someone else for one night. Too bad my wife Alicia decided to be herself, just with better lighting and a leather catsuit that costs more than my monthly car payment. Greg, you're slouching again, she whispered through her perfectly painted red lips as we walked into the Marriott ballroom. And fix your eye patch. You look like a pirate who gave up. I adjusted the cheap plastic patch and straightened my shoulders. At 38, I was still carrying the frame of my college boxing days, but now it was wrapped in 15 extra pounds and the kind of resignation that comes from managing 3 restaurants in a chain that treats customer service like a blood sport. Better? I asked, knowing it wasn't. Alicia was already scanning the room, her green eyes hunting for more interesting prey. The company Halloween gala was her stage, and I was just the prop she'd dragged along to prove she wasn't completely available. Yet, the ballroom buzzed with forced corporate cheer, lawyers dressed as superheroes, accountants in zombie makeup, and marketing executives pretending their vampire costumes were ironic. Everyone drinking too much and laughing too loud, desperate to prove they were fun outside the office. "There's Susie," Alicia said, waving at her best friend across the room. Susie owned a hair salon and had the kind of confidence that came from knowing everyone's secrets and having the bleach to prove it. Tonight she was dressed as a nurse, though the outfit looked more like it came from a website that required age verification. Susie bounced over, her husband Dominic trailing behind like a well-trained attack dog. Dominic worked at the Ford plant, spent his free time at the gym, and had the kind of swagger that suggested he'd never met a mirror he didn't like. "Greg, love the costume," Susie squealed, though her eyes were already back on Alicia. "You look amazing, honey. That catsuit is doing things to the men in this room that their wives are going to hear about later." Dominic grunted his agreement, his gaze lingering on my wife's curves a beat too long. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the same feeling I used to get before stepping into the ring, except now there was nowhere to throw a punch. "Drinks?" I suggested, needing something to do with my hands besides making fists. "Oh, Dominic will get them," Alicia said smoothly. "He knows exactly what I like." The way she said it made my eye patch feel tighter. Dominic flashed his gym rat grin and headed to the bar, his pirate costume somehow managing to show off his biceps. Because of course we'd both come as pirates. The universe had a sick sense of humor. "So, Greg," Susie said, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper women use when they're about to slice someone open. "Alicia tells me you've been working late a lot. All those restaurants to manage. Must be exhausting." "Someone has to pay for the leather pants," I replied, gesturing at my wife's outfit. Alicia's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Greg's always been such a comedian. Haven't you, honey?" Before I could answer, Richard appeared at my elbow. My old college buddy was dressed as a vampire, complete with plastic fangs that made him lisp. His wife Nikki followed, looking embarrassed in her witch costume. "Jesus, Greg, you look like you're attending your own funeral," Richard said, spitting slightly through the fangs. "What's with the long face?" "Just enjoying the ambiance," I said. Nothing says fun workplace event like mandatory costumes and watered-down drinks. Nikki laughed. "At least you didn't have to listen to Richard practice his Transylvanian accent for 2 weeks." "I was perfecting my craft," Richard protested, then gave up on the accent. "These fangs are killing me. I sound like I need speech therapy." Dominic returned with drinks, somehow managing to carry 4 glasses while still looking like he was posing for a fitness magazine. He handed Alicia her martini with a flourish that involved more hand contact than strictly necessary. "To a night of revelations," he said, raising his beer. We all clinked glasses, but I noticed Alicia and Dominic held eye contact just a moment too long. The kind of moment that makes a husband's radar start pinging like a submarine in enemy waters. "So, Dominic," I said, taking a sip of my whiskey, "how's married life treating you? Still in the honeymoon phase?" His smile faltered for just a second. "Every day's an adventure with this one," he said, squeezing Susie's shoulder. But his eyes drifted back to Alicia. "Adventures are overrated," I said. "I prefer predictability, loyalty, old-fashioned values." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a cutlass. Alicia's grip tightened on her martini glass, and I could practically hear her thinking of ways to punish me later. "Well," Susie said brightly, I think I need to powder my nose. Alicia, want to come? They disappeared toward the bathroom, leaving me with Dominic and my increasingly uncomfortable friends. Richard was trying to discreetly remove his fangs, and Nikki was studying her drink like it might contain answers to life's mysteries. Nice party, Dominic said, clearly struggling for conversation. Yeah, nothing like forced fun with coworkers, I replied. Though I guess you wouldn't know about corporate events, working at the plant. His jaw tightened. Honest work. Good benefits. Not everyone needs to wear a tie to feel important. True. Some people just need to wear tight t-shirts and flex a lot. Richard choked on his drink. Okay, maybe we should... No, it's fine, Dominic said, stepping closer. Greg's just being Greg. Right, buddy? The word buddy came out like a threat. I could smell his cologne, something expensive that probably came in a bottle shaped like a dumbbell. Just making conversation, I said. Though I have to ask, do you always stare at other men's wives like that, or is tonight special? The ballroom seemed to shrink around us. Richard grabbed my arm, but I shrugged him off. Months of suspicion and humiliation were bubbling up like acid reflux. I don't know what you're talking about, Dominic said, but his face was flushing red above his fake beard. Sure you don't. Just like you don't know why my wife suddenly started going to your gym, or why she's been getting so many text messages during dinner. Greg, man, you're drunk, Richard whispered urgently. Let's just... I'm not drunk enough, I said, my voice rising. Not nearly drunk enough to pretend I don't see what's happening right in front of my face. Dominic's hands clenched into fists. You better watch your mouth. Or what? You'll flex at me? Show me your protein powder collection? That's when he made his mistake. Instead of walking away, instead of diffusing the situation like a smart man would, Dominic let his ego make the decision. He reached out and shoved me, hard enough to make me stumble backward. The old boxing instincts kicked in before my brain could stop them. I didn't throw a punch. That would have been assault. Instead, I used his own momentum against him, stepping aside and letting his forward motion carry him past me. Then I helped him along with a gentle push that sent him crashing into a nearby table full of Halloween decorations. Fake spider webs, plastic pumpkins, and someone's abandoned drink went flying. Dominic landed on his ass in a pile of orange and black streamers, his pirate hat askew, and his dignity somewhere under the table. The ballroom went dead silent. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned our way. Someone's phone was already out, recording what would undoubtedly become tomorrow's viral video. Alicia and Susie came rushing back from the bathroom, taking in the scene with horror. My wife's face went through several colors before settling on a shade of white that matched her clenched teeth. What the hell happened? She hissed. Your boyfriend slipped, I said calmly, straightening my pirate vest. Guess all those protein shakes don't help with balance. Dominic scrambled to his feet, his face murderous. You son of a... Enough! The voice belonged to Alicia's boss, Mr. Patterson, who had materialized like a corporate ghost. This is a company event. If you gentlemen can't behave like adults, you can find the door. The crowd began to disperse, disappointed that the show was over. Richard and Nikki flanked me like bodyguards, while Susie helped brush streamers off her husband. We're leaving, Alicia announced, her voice cold enough to freeze hell. Greg, get your coat. As we walked toward the exit, I heard Dominic's voice behind us, low and angry. This isn't over. I turned back just long enough to meet his eyes. You're right, I said. It's just getting started. Outside in the parking lot, Alicia turned on me with the fury of a woman whose carefully laid plans had just exploded in public. How dare you embarrass me like that in front of my colleagues, in front of everyone? I embarrassed you? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's rich, coming from someone who's been playing footsie with her best friend's husband for months. You're paranoid and jealous and pathetic, she spat. Dominic was just being friendly. Is that what we're calling it now? Friendly? She fumbled with her car keys, her hand shaking with rage. We'll discuss this at home, away from witnesses. As I watched her drive away in her BMW, leaving me to find my own ride home, I realized something had shifted inside me. The humiliation, the anger, the months of feeling like a fool in my own marriage. It was all crystallizing into something harder and colder. I pulled out my phone and called an Uber, then sent a text to Richard. Thanks for having my back tonight. His response came quickly. Always, man, but be careful. I've heard some rumors about Alicia and Dominic. Nothing concrete, but I stared at the message, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. But this time, it didn't feel like fear. It felt like the moment before the bell rings and you step into the ring, knowing someone's going to get hurt. The Uber pulled up, and I climbed into the back seat. As we drove through the Halloween night, past houses decorated with fake graveyards and plastic skeletons, I couldn't help but think how appropriate it all was. Because something had definitely died tonight. My willingness to play the fool, my tolerance for disrespect, my belief that ignoring a problem would make it go away. Tomorrow, I decided, would be the first day of a very different kind of marriage. The silent treatment lasted exactly 12 hours, which was a new record for Alicia. Usually, she could maintain her icy disapproval for days, rationing out her words like a prison warden distributing bread. But by Sunday morning, the need to justify her behavior outweighed her desire to punish mine. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she appeared, still in her silk pajamas, her blonde hair perfectly tousled in that way that took 40 minutes and 3 different products to achieve. "We need to talk," she announced, settling into her chair at our granite breakfast bar, like a queen preparing to hold court. "Do we?" I poured myself a cup and deliberately didn't offer her one. Small rebellions, but they felt good. "About last night, about your behavior." "My behavior?" I leaned against the counter, studying her face. Even first thing in the morning, she was beautiful. It was the kind of beauty that had made me stupid for 15 years. The kind that made other men stare and made me feel like I'd won some cosmic lottery. Now, I was starting to wonder what the real cost of that ticket had been. "Greg, I know you've been stressed with work, and I know managing those restaurants isn't easy, but taking it out on my friends isn't acceptable. Your friends." I took a sip of coffee, savoring both the caffeine and her growing irritation. "Is that what Dominic is? A friend?" Her green eyes flashed. "He's Susie's husband. He's been nothing but kind to us, and you humiliated him in front of everyone." Kind. That's an interesting word choice. I set down my mug and crossed my arms. "Tell me, Alicia, when exactly did Dominic become so important to you? Was it before or after you joined his gym?" "It's not his gym, it's just where he works out. And I joined because I needed to get back in shape after having the kids." "The kids are 8 and 10. You joined 3 months ago." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the tile floor. "I don't like your tone, and I don't like being treated like an idiot in my own marriage." For a moment, we stared at each other across our designer kitchen, 15 years of marriage hanging in the balance like a sword over our heads. I could see her calculating, weighing her options, deciding how much truth she could afford to tell. "Nothing is happening between Dominic and me," she said finally. "But even if there was, maybe you should ask yourself why." There it was. The admission wrapped in an accusation, the knife sliding between my ribs with surgical precision. "Enlighten me," I said. "When was the last time you really looked at me, Greg? Not just glanced up from your phone or your laptop, but actually saw me. When was the last time we went on a date that wasn't an obligation? When did you last tell me I was beautiful without me fishing for compliments?" Each question hit like a jab to the solar plexus, because there was truth in them. I had been distant, distracted, taking her for granted. But that didn't justify what I suspected was happening. "So, this is my fault," I said. "Your emotional affair is actually my neglect in disguise." "It's not an affair!" But her voice cracked on the words, and we both heard it. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Upstairs, I could hear our kids watching cartoons, their laughter a reminder of what was at stake here. Emma and Jake, 8 and 10 years old, blissfully unaware that their parents' marriage was disintegrating over breakfast. "I want you to stop seeing him," I said quietly. "I can't do that. He's Susie's husband. We have mutual friends, social obligations. Then you'll see him in group settings only. No more private gym sessions, no more text messages, no more whatever this is." Her jaw tightened. "You don't get to give me ultimatums. Watch me." She grabbed her purse from the counter, her movements sharp and angry. "I'm going to Susie's. We'll continue this conversation when you're ready to be reasonable." After she left, I sat in my kitchen, listening to the hum of expensive appliances and the distant sound of my children's voices. The house felt hollow, like a beautiful shell with nothing living inside it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Alicia's social media, something I'd never done before. Her Instagram was full of gym selfies, motivational quotes about living your best life, and photos of girls' nights out that seemed to happen with increasing frequency. Then I saw it. A picture from 2 weeks ago. Alicia and Susie at some trendy downtown bar, but in the background, barely visible, was Dominic. He was at a table with other people, but his eyes were clearly focused on my wife. I screenshotted the image and zoomed in. There was something in his expression, a hunger that made my stomach turn. And Alicia? She was angled toward the camera, but her body language was all wrong. She was performing for someone, and it wasn't the photographer. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Hey man, you okay after last night? Nikki and I were worried." I called him instead of texting back. "Jesus, Greg, you sound like hell," he said by way of greeting. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. What have you heard about Alicia and Dominic?" The pause that followed told me everything I needed to know. "Richard? Look, man, it's probably nothing. Just gossip. You know how people talk." "What kind of gossip?" Another pause. "Nikki heard from her sister that someone saw them at that new restaurant downtown. The Italian place. They were close, holding hands across the table." The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. "When?" "Last Tuesday. Around lunchtime." Last Tuesday. The day Alicia said she was meeting a client about a marketing campaign. The day she came home 2 hours later than expected. Her lipstick freshly applied and her story just a little too detailed. "There's more," Richard said reluctantly. "Nikki didn't want me to tell you, but after what happened last night, tell me. Her sister works at the Marriott. She said she's seen them there too. In the bar, always sitting in the back corner. Always very intimate." I closed my eyes, feeling the last of my denial crumble away. "How long has this been going on?" "Greg, I don't know for sure that anything's going on. It could be innocent." "How long, Richard?" "A couple months, maybe more. Look, maybe you should talk to Alicia directly. Give her a chance to explain." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, a life we'd built together. And she was throwing it all away for a muscle-bound factory worker with more testosterone than sense. But what really killed me wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how stupid I'd been, how many signs I'd missed, how many lies I'd swallowed, how many times I'd made excuses for her behavior because I didn't want to face the truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Alicia. "Staying at Susie's tonight. Need space to think." I stared at the message, imagining her at Susie's house, probably getting coached on how to handle her suspicious husband. Or maybe she wasn't at Susie's at all. Maybe she was somewhere else entirely. With someone else entirely. That's when I made my decision. If Alicia wanted to play games, I'd play along. But I was done being the fool in this marriage. It was time to level the playing field. I went upstairs to check on the kids, who were now building something elaborate with Legos in Jake's room. "Where's Mom?" Emma asked, not looking up from her construction project. "She went to see Aunt Susie. She'll be back tomorrow." "Can we have pizza for dinner?" Jake asked hopefully. "Absolutely." They cheered and went back to their building, secure in their world where the biggest worry was whether they'd have enough pepperoni. I envied them their innocence. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to Susie's house and parked across the street just to see if Alicia's car was really there. It wasn't. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching Susie's house, seeing the warm light in her windows, the normal suburban evening playing out behind her curtains. Alicia's car was nowhere to be seen. On the drive home, I passed the Marriott. Almost without thinking, I turned into the parking lot and cruised through, looking for her BMW. I found it parked near the back entrance, the one that led directly to the bar. My hands were shaking as I parked and walked into the hotel. The bar was dimly lit, full of business travelers and locals, looking for somewhere classier than the chain restaurants out by the highway. I found them in the back corner, just like Richard had said. Alicia was wearing the red dress she'd claimed was too fancy for anywhere we ever go. Dominic was leaning across the small table, his hand covering hers, their heads close together in intimate conversation. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't notice me until I was standing right next to their table. Well, I said, my voice surprisingly calm, this is cozy. Alicia's face went white, then red, then white again. Dominic had the grace to look embarrassed, but he didn't let go of her hand. Greg, Alicia said, her voice barely above a whisper, this isn't what it looks like. I pulled out my phone and took a picture before either of them could react. The flash lit up their guilty faces like a crime scene photographer's strobe. Actually, I said, it's exactly what it looks like. Dominic finally found his voice. Look, man, we were just talking. Save it. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 15 years, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about our marriage, you know where to find me. Until then, enjoy your evening. I walked out of the bar with my head high and my heart in pieces, but with something else too, clarity. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood and exactly what I was dealing with. The war had begun, and I was finally ready to fight. The confrontation came the next morning, earlier than I expected. Alicia arrived home at 7 a.m., her red dress wrinkled and her carefully constructed explanations already falling apart before she opened her mouth. I was in the kitchen again, same position as yesterday, but everything had changed. The coffee tasted different, the morning light seemed harsher, and the woman walking through my door felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face. We need to talk, she said, but her voice lacked yesterday's authority. Do we? I thought the picture was worth 1,000 words. She flinched. Greg, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been lying to me for months? How you've been sneaking around with your best friend's husband? How you looked me in the eye yesterday and denied everything? It's not what you think. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. I'm done with the lies, Alicia. I know about the restaurant. I know about the hotel bar. I know about all of it. She sank into her chair, the fight going out of her like air from a punctured balloon. For a moment, she looked vulnerable, almost like the woman I'd married. Then her jaw tightened, and I saw her shift tactics. Fine. Yes, Dominic and I have been close. But it's not some sordid affair, Greg. It's a connection, something real. A connection. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what we're calling adultery now? We haven't slept together. Yet. She didn't deny it, which was answer enough. What do you want from me? She asked. You want me to apologize for finding someone who actually pays attention to me? Someone who makes me feel alive again? I want you to remember that you have a husband and 2 children who depend on you. I want you to remember the vows you made 15 years ago. Those vows went both ways, Greg. When was the last time you made me feel desired? When did you last plan a surprise for me or tell me you loved me without me saying it first? She was right, and we both knew it. I had been distant, preoccupied with work, taking our marriage for granted. But that didn't justify what she'd done. So we work on it, I said. We go to counseling, we fix what's broken. What if I don't want to fix it? The question hung between us like a blade. Upstairs, I could hear the kids getting ready for school, their voices a reminder of what was at stake. Then, we need to discuss what happens next, I said quietly. I need time to think. You've had months to think. While you were thinking, I was here, taking care of our children, paying our bills, trying to hold our family together. Don't you dare play the martyr card with me. And don't you dare play the victim. You made choices, Alicia. Now we all have to live with the consequences. She stood up, grabbing her purse. I'm taking the kids to school. When I get back, I want you gone for the day. I need space. This is my house, too. Just for today, please. After she left with Emma and Jake, I sat in the quiet kitchen and tried to figure out what came next. Divorce seemed inevitable, but I wasn't ready to blow up my children's world just yet. Maybe there was still a chance to salvage something, some way to rebuild what we'd lost. My phone rang. Richard. How are you holding up? He asked. I've been better. Listen, I need a favor. Anything. I need you to find out everything you can about Dominic. Where he works, where he hangs out, what his schedule is like. Can Nikki's sister help with that? Greg, what are you planning? Nothing violent. I just need to understand what I'm dealing with. Okay, but be careful. Guys like Dominic don't like being cornered. Neither do guys like me. That afternoon, I drove to Dominic's gym. It was one of those serious bodybuilding places. All black iron and motivational posters, where the air smelled like sweat and desperation. I signed up for a day pass and found a corner where I could observe without being noticed. Dominic was there, of course, working out with the kind of intensity that suggested he was trying to lift away his problems. He was bigger than I remembered, all bulging muscles and barely contained aggression. But there was something else too, a nervousness that hadn't been there before. Good. He should be nervous. I watched him for an hour, learning his routine, his habits, the way he interacted with other gym members. He was popular here, the kind of alpha male that other men deferred to and women flirted with. But I also noticed how often he checked his phone, how distracted he seemed, probably waiting for messages from my wife. When he finished his workout and headed to the locker room, I followed at a distance. The locker room was nearly empty, just a few stragglers changing clothes. Dominic's locker was in the back corner, and he'd left it slightly ajar while he showered. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times call for creative measures. I slipped a small GPS tracker into his gym bag, the kind you can buy online for tracking luggage. Nothing illegal, nothing that would get me arrested, just a way to keep tabs on where he went and when. Over the next week, I tracked his movements obsessively. Work, gym, home, and twice to locations that made my blood boil. The Marriott bar and a small motel on the outskirts of town. Both times, Alicia's car was there too. The motel visits told me everything I needed to know about how far their connection had progressed. Meanwhile, at home, Alicia and I maintained a cold civility for the kids' sake. We slept in separate bedrooms, communicated through text messages even when we were in the same house, and pretended everything was normal when Emma and Jake were around. But I was planning. Researching divorce lawyers, documenting evidence, preparing for the battle I knew was coming. Because if Alicia thought she could destroy our family and walk away with half of everything I'd worked for, she was about to learn otherwise. The breaking point came on a Friday night. Alicia announced she was going out with the girls, the same lie she'd been using for weeks. I waited until she left, then checked the GPS tracker. She was heading straight for the motel. That's when I made the call that would change everything. Richard, it's time. Are you and Nikki free tonight? What do you need? Witnesses and maybe a video camera. Greg, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. An hour later, we were parked outside the Sleepy Inn motel, watching my wife's BMW in the parking lot. Room 237, according to the GPS tracker, that was still in Dominic's gym bag. This is really happening, Nikki said softly. She'd been quiet during the drive, but I could see the anger in her eyes. She'd liked Alicia, had considered her a friend. The betrayal cut both ways. Last chance to back out, I told them. We're with you, Richard said firmly. Whatever you need. I pulled out my phone and started recording as we walked across the parking lot. The curtains in room 237 were drawn, but there was a small gap where they didn't quite meet. Through it, I could see everything I needed to see. My wife of 15 years, the mother of my children, locked in an embrace with another woman's husband. I knocked on the door. The scrambling sounds from inside would have been comical if my heart wasn't breaking. It took them 3 minutes to answer. 3 minutes of whispered panic and desperate clothing adjustment. Dominic opened the door, wearing jeans and no shirt, his hair disheveled and his face flushed. Behind him, I could see Alicia clutching a hotel robe, her makeup smeared and her eyes wide with terror. Hello, Dominic, I said calmly, still recording. Fancy meeting you here. Greg, man, this isn't what it looks like. Seems to be a popular phrase around here. I looked past him to my wife. Hi, honey. How was girls' night? Alicia's face crumpled. Greg, please. Please what? Please pretend I didn't see this? Please keep quiet so you can keep playing house with your boyfriend? It's not like that, Dominic said, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? What's it like then? Help me understand. Richard and Nikki flanked me, their presence adding weight to the confrontation. Dominic looked like he wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Look, he said, Maybe we should all just calm down and talk about this like adults. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouses' backs, Nikki said coldly. Adults don't lie to their children. Where's Susie tonight? I asked. Does she know her husband is here? Dominic's face went white. You can't tell her. She doesn't need to know about this. But I needed to know? My kids needed to have their family destroyed? We never meant for this to happen, Alicia said, finally finding her voice. It just did. Bullshit. The word came out harder than I intended. You made choices. Both of you. Every lie, every secret meeting, every time you looked me in the eye and pretended everything was fine. Those were choices. I stopped recording and put my phone away. Here's what's going to happen. Dominic, you're going to go home to your wife and tell her everything. Tonight. I can't. You can and you will. Because if you don't, I will. And I have video evidence to back up my story. He nodded miserably. I turned to Alicia. And you're going to pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay. We'll tell the kids you're visiting your sister for a while. Greg, please, can't we work this out? You made your choice in that motel room. Now live with it. As we walked back to the car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. The uncertainty was over. The waiting was done. I finally knew exactly where I stood and what I was fighting for. The war was far from over, but I'd won the first battle, and I was just getting started.